Good evening, everyone. As you make your way to your seats, I wanted to say welcome to our Good Friday service. My name is Amanda. I'm the pastor here. And today is an important day in the life of the church during Holy Week. Sometimes we like to skip from Palm Sunday to Easter. And that doesn't really help us on our journey of faith. We have to journey with Jesus to the cross so that we might seek to understand the sacrifice. Before we begin our service, I did want to invite you back on Sunday. After today's service, we will walk out in silence, and on Sunday morning, we will shout that Christ is risen, and that's an important part of our journey too. So if you'd like to join us, our worship will be at 10 a.m. on Sunday. We are not going to have our sunrise service because of the 85% chance of rain. So please spread the word about that. We're not going to do that. This evening is a Good Friday Tenebrae service. If you've never been to a Tenebrae service, that word, tenebrae, in Latin means darkness. Throughout this service, there will be a gradual decreasing of light. I will be extinguishing candles. There will be readings of Scripture. We'll have music. We'll be singing Were You There, verse by verse between the readings. The lyrics to that hymn will be on the screen before you, but if you'd like to use your hymnal, you're welcome to. You can find it on page 288. So I invite you to just sit in the darkness, to be reminded of the hopelessness of this day before we knew that Christ would be risen. We'll begin by singing the first verse of Were You There?
After the supper, they sang a hymn and prepared to set out for the Mount of Olives. Jesus told them that they would all desert him that very night. Most of them were confused and didn't know what to say. However, Peter charged boldly and blindly into the breach in their conversation. "Even if everyone else deserts you," Peter said, "I never will." "Peter," replied Jesus, "you seem so confident now when there is no immediate danger. But the rooster will not crow in the morning until you have denied 3 times that you even know me." Peter protested, "Even if I had to die with you, I will never deny you." All the others said the same. But even so, as they recalled that Jesus had never been wrong about anything, they began to lose hope.
They crossed the Kidron Valley and entered the garden containing a grove of olive trees. "Stay here while I go ahead and pray," Jesus told them. "You also should pray that you have the faith and the courage to deal with what happens next." He took Peter, James, and John with him. "I am in agony," he told them. "Stay and keep vigil with me." Then he went a little further into the garden and began to pray, asking for any way out consistent with God's will. He came back and found them asleep. "Can you not support me for even 1 hour?" he asked. "Pray, not only for me, but for your own sake." He left them a second time and prayed that God would give him the strength to endure what lay ahead. He came back and found them asleep again. He let them sleep on and went back to pray a third time. When he came back to the disciples after his third prayer, Jesus woke them up. "Get up," he said. "The time for my betrayal has come."
Judas, the betrayer, knew the garden where Jesus was likely to go and pray, because Jesus had gone there many times with his disciples. And so, as Jesus was waking the disciples from their sleep, Judas showed up with a mob, including temple guards and others who had been driven to anger by the chief priest and his high council. They were carrying swords and clubs and were prepared for a fight. Judas had worked out a sign with them, telling them that the one he kissed was the one to seize. He went straight up to Jesus and greeted him with a kiss. Jesus responded to Judas, asking why he felt it necessary to resort to such a charade. Then the temple guards grabbed Jesus.
Immediately, one of Jesus' disciples pulled a sword and struck out at a member of the mob, cutting off the man's ear. Jesus told his disciples to sheath his sword, and he healed the man's ear. "Don't you know," he said, "that I could call 1,000 of angels to protect us? Do not resist any further." Then he turned to the mob. Am I some dangerous criminal that you must come with swords and clubs to arrest me at the night in an out-of-the-way garden? Why didn't you just arrest me in the temple while I was teaching the people?" Then all his disciples ran away.
Caiaphas, the high priest, where the high council had gathered. Peter followed at a distance. When they took Jesus inside, Peter slipped into the courtyard, trying to conceal himself among the curious servants of the members of the high council. Inside, a number of false accusers made charges against Jesus in order that he could be sentenced to death, but none were believable. Finally, two men stepped forward and announced that Jesus had declared that he could destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Caiaphas stood up and demanded that Jesus respond to this new claim, but Jesus remained silent. Finally, Caiaphas demanded that Jesus tell him if he was the Messiah. When Jesus replied that he was, Caiaphas became enraged. "You have heard this blasphemy," he said to the council. "What is your decision?" Then all the members of the high council agreed that Jesus must die.
At this time, Peter had been sitting in the courtyard. A servant girl came up to him and said that she had seen him with Jesus. Peter denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about." Later, out by the gate, another servant girl noticed Peter and told her companion that Peter had traveled with Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus denied it again. "I don't even know the man," he said. A little while later, some other servants spoke to Peter. "You must be one of Jesus' disciples. Your Galilean accent gives you away." "I swear by God," replied Peter, "I do not know the man." Then the rooster crowed, signaling that Peter would not soon know peace.
Early in the morning, the Jewish leaders met to discuss how they might convince the Roman governor to sentence Jesus to death. They tied Jesus' hands and marched him to Pilate's house. Meanwhile, Judas had learned of the trial that had taken place in the home of Caiaphas. He realized that his plan to force Jesus to assert himself as a political leader had gone terribly wrong. So he took the money he'd been given in payment for the betrayal back to the religious leaders. "I've betrayed an innocent man," he said. "Why should we care?" they replied. "It is of no concern to us." Then Judas threw the money onto the floor of the temple and went out and hanged himself.
Jesus was taken before Pilate, who asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "It is as you say," replied Jesus. Then the members of the high council brought numerous charges against Jesus. "What is your purpose, or what is your response to these accusations?" asked Pilate. But Jesus remained silent, much to Pilate's surprise. During his examination of Jesus, Pilate received a note from his wife telling him that she had dreamed about Jesus and that she feared that the joy of the world depended upon Jesus' fate.
It was the custom at that time of the feast of the Passover for the Roman governor to release a prisoner as a gesture of goodwill. There was at that time a murderer and insurrectionist in prison whose name was Barabbas. The chief priest and the high council had persuaded the crowds to request that Barabbas be released. Pilate realized that the religious leaders were afraid that if the people listened to the teachings of Jesus, their influence would be reduced. So he said to the crowds that were gathered at his house, "Who shall I release? Barabbas the murderer or Jesus the Messiah?" "Barabbas," the crowd shouted. "Then what should I do with Jesus?" Pilate asked. "Crucify him," the crowd shouted. "But what crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. "Crucify him," the crowd shouted even louder. Pilate was afraid that a riot might ensue, so he called for a bowl of water and made a show of washing his hands in view of the crowd. "I am washing my hands of this matter," he said. "This innocent man's blood is on you." Then Pilate pardoned Barabbas and turned Jesus over to the Roman soldiers to be executed.
The soldiers led Jesus away. They flogged him almost to death. Then they put on the scarlet robe on him and made a crown from the branches of the thorn bush. They forced the crown onto his head and put a stick in his hand as a scepter. They struck him over and over again. They mocked him, bowing before him and calling him the King of the Jews. Then they marched him to the place of the crucifixion.
They made Jesus carry the crossbar that he would be nailed to, but he was so weak from the beatings that he kept falling down. So they grabbed a bystander named Simon and forced him to carry the crossbar. Finally, they arrived at the place of the skull, and they nailed Jesus to the cross.
While they were waiting for Jesus to die, the soldiers gambled for his clothing, throwing dice to see who would win. They offered him wine mixed with myrrh in order to ease the pain, but he refused it. Pilate ordered that a sign be placed over the head saying, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the religious leaders stood around the cross, mocking Jesus. They asked Pilate to change the sign, but he refused to do so.
Many people shouted at Jesus, mocking him. "You said you could destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. If you have that kind of power, why don't you save yourself and come down from the cross?" Those who had believed that Jesus was the Messiah now didn't know what to believe. How could Jesus die and leave them in this world that did not know God's love?
Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother Mary, her sister, and Mary Magdalene. John, Jesus' disciple, was also there. When Jesus saw John standing next to his mother, he asked John to look after her, as a son would. Mary, who knew that her son was also the Son of God, feared that upon the death of Jesus, the world would be plunged into darkness.
At noon, darkness fell across the sky. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out,
my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Soon after, he said,
"Father, into your hands I release my spirit."
Then he uttered a loud cry and died. At that moment, the curtain in the temple that separated the people from the Holy of Holies was torn in two from the top to the bottom. A Roman soldier standing near the cross exclaimed,
"Surely this man was the Son of God."